All right, so today we have quiz two, and then we have chapters 10 and 11. So there we go. Let's see. I feel like we're still missing somebody, but I cannot put my finger on it right this second. All right, so is everybody ready for quiz two? Yep. You're like, yeah, we're ready. All right, so apologize for last week. I really thought it was 5:37, not 5:27, but I got it now. We won't run late this week, I promise. I apologize. So we're gonna do quiz two, geez, and then we are gonna do chapters 10 and 11. And so I pray that this works. Um, Let me just pull it up real quick. So I believe it should be set correctly for your quiz. All right, so I am going to just let me know, which I know you guys will, so I don't worry about that. So I put the password for the quiz is fall colors, capital F, all one word. Um, so fingers crossed that everybody can get in.
Are we allowed to go ahead and start it?
Yes, ma'am. All right, guys. So awesome job on your quiz. Very impressed. You guys did awesome. All right. So just a couple reminders before we get started. Um, There is the Cahoots review tomorrow morning with Dr. Tenza. And then Sunday is the exam review. Make sure I give you guys the right time. So your exam review is going to be Sunday at 7 Eastern time. Oh, geez. Sorry, I thought I turned my camera on. So again, tomorrow is the Cahoots review with Dr. Tenza, and then the exam review, the live exam review is going to be Sunday at 7. So hope everybody can try to make it. Once the exam review is over, I will post the recording, so everybody will have it, to review for the exam one. But again, really good job on your quizzes so far. Very impressed. So far everybody is doing great. So great job with that. Yes, Miss Ebony.
You said the exam review is Sunday at 7,
Uh-huh.
7 a.m. or 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m., sorry.
Okay, is that the only review that we're gonna have?
And then you have the one with Dr. Tenza tomorrow morning. I think it's at 8. Let me double check.
Okay, I work Saturdays and Sundays 12 and a half hour shifts, so from 7 a to 7:30 p.
Okay,
So will it be posted? Because I know when you did
absolutely.
our okay, because when you did our HESI review, I think Kaylee was the only person that attended.
Hmm.
You was like, "Do you want me to post it?" And I'm like, "What? I really wanted to be there, but I couldn't."
No, it's okay. I just,
Okay.
sometimes when it's only one student, but yeah, no, I posted it. I just wanted to, but yeah, it will. I work on the weekends. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So just so you guys are aware, if you go to my YouTube channel, there are the previous terms reviews that are posted on my YouTube channel as well. So you have access to those. Um, so far as exam review goes, since everybody is here, Kevin, are you there? Okay. Um, is there a time because I don't know, everybody's schedules. So I just know, of course, what class when you're with me. Um, is there a time during the week that you guys are available for an exam review? So I know you guys have clinical, some of you have clinicals Friday mornings, right? Is it mental health? I believe. I don't remember. Fridays really wouldn't be a good day for an exam review, but is there another day during the week? What are some options?
I think Cincinnati's is like Monday mornings, like from Monday morning to like 1 p.m. And
Okay.
then the rest of our days, we're pretty much in class from like 8:30 to like 3 or 4 or 5.
So you're in class every day.
Yeah, we're in class, clinicals, yeah.
Okay. Um, let's see. Um, Monday through Friday. Okay. Yeah. So everybody is they're like pretty busy. Um, Ethel, yes, you raised your hand.
Yes, ma'am. I was just gonna ask, is Miss Tensa gonna do a review too, and do we have access to that?
Yeah, so she has the Cahoots review is tomorrow morning at 8, and then she'll post that once it's over.
Will it only be the Kahoot review? She won't do a live review?
I'm not sure. So that is something that we'll have to I can ask her real quick. I don't know if she'll reply before because I think she's teaching as well.
Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah, she's in class right now, so we're all, but so yeah, so you have that, and then yeah, trying to find another time. I'm trying to think of another time that I would be able to do one. So I'm available mostly in the mornings. Um let me look.
Hey, Miss Martinez, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought the review Sunday was at 8 p.m.
Let me look at your calendar real quick.
It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I just got them. Yep, you're right. I did it backwards on mine. So 8. Yep. You're right. I just put it backwards on my calendar. So you're absolutely correct. 8. Does that help a little bit for some? I wrote them backwards on my calendar. Let me fix this.
Okay, so it's 8 p.m.
Correct.
Okay.
That's why I put them in your calendar. And then when I put them on my calendar, I got them mixed up. So fix that. All right. All right. So yes, 8 p.m. on Sunday. So you can join. Great. As soon as the review is over, I will post it. So you guys will have access to it. So again, Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and then Sunday at 8 p.m. is going to be your live exam review. And like I said too, if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll be able to find there's going to be some additional previous exam reviews from previous terms are posted up there too, so you have access to those. And then did anybody have any questions about the quiz?
I got a question about that baptism question, because that was the one I missed it. Like so I know that a nurse can't do a baptism, but they can do it in the absence of the family, right?
They can do a baptism, yes. So if, especially like if, I'm gonna look at the question real quick. Oh, give me 1 second. Gotta go back the other way. So in the absence, so say you have a child that, is, in an imminent state, and they are potentially going to pass, and they need to do, they're requesting a baptism, then yes, we can baptize the child, just, for comfort, yes.
Does the family have to be present?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that was what I.
Yeah, if they request it, then yes, we can do a baptism. The family doesn't need to be there. All right. All right, so we'll get started with chapter 10. So chapter 10 is cultural uniqueness, sensitivity, and competence. And so we'll share my screen. Everybody see the PowerPoints? Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right. So again, spiritual needs, spiritual caring, religious differences, all of those wonderful things. So, we are going to work with a very diverse population of clients. And, you know, everybody has different beliefs, different needs. So when we look at, providing cultural competence, or cultural competence is the attempt to gain knowledge and skills that allow you to effectively provide care for clients of different cultures. And so, you have to develop a sense of, or an awareness, of different cultures, which is what we call cultural sensitivity. And you need to learn about people that are different from you. And so that's one of the wonderful things about being in healthcare is that you are going to meet so many different people from various cultures and various and I think I put the wrong let's do this. I'll put the right PowerPoint up and then you guys will really be good. And so um just think about, just, your culture and the things that are important to you and unique to you. And that will allow you to kind of see what others, how they view the world. So culture is a way of life. It's ever changing knowledge, ideas, thoughts, beliefs, values, communication actions, traditions, customs, objects that a group of people possess. It's the way of, doing their way of doing things. It also includes the standards of behavior, set of rules to live by. Customs themselves are generally accepted ways of doing things that are common to people that are within the same culture. And one of the biggest things is an important thing about culture is that it is learned behavior. Okay, this is behavior that is learned. It's things that have been passed on from one generation to the next, right? So think about, how you grew up and where you grew up and, some of the things that were important, not only within your family, but within your culture. And that's, how we grew up. And so that is what we call enculturation. So enculturation, I'm going to switch the slides here. Enculturation is just the process of learning your culture, the way that your group does things. And so one of the results of that enculturation is a worldview that is shared by people that have that same cultural background. Um, and it's just that's the reality of that wonderful group. And that reality is every aspect of their life. Again, your cultural competence is your continuing attempt to gain knowledge and skills that allow you to effectively provide care for your clients of different cultures. And being culturally sensitive is just being aware of different cultures, and how we can make sure that we are providing effective care based off of those cultures and not infringing on their rights. Cultural bias, when we think of bias, what do we think of when we think of bias? What is bias?
Judging,
Okay, it's judging. Okay. Um,
Like
know,
different aspects on different things.
like
Right.
mental learning, maybe.
Okay.
Discriminate.
Say that one more time.
Discriminate.
And it could lead to discrimination, absolutely. And when we look at it, and how we view our own worldview, it can lead to things like ethnocentrism, prejudice, discrimination, right? All of those things. And how do we avoid doing that? How do we avoid doing that?
About keeping an open mind and learning from different cultures.
By keeping an open mind and learning from different cultures, absolutely.
And knowing your own beliefs going into it as well.
Absolutely. Knowing what your own beliefs are is super important, right? Because we can use what we know and we can use what we feel, and understanding those things will help us to avoid those in interactions with other people. So when we look at, and there's a nice little term, it's called ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is believing that my culture is the best culture, right? It's the best, right? There's nothing better than mine. And so that, of course, that could mean that they're uncomfortable with, others that display different customers or behaviors. But it's very common. I mean, there are some things, that we're overly proud of. It's just kind of like rooting for a football team, if you think about it, right? Um, if you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, you're like, my team is the best, right? Or Ebony, I saw your head turn. Are you not guys, I'm against Dallas.
No, no, no. I'm
I'm just
sorry.
teasing.
The kids just came home from school, so they're
Oh,
so excited to tell me about their day. I'm
oh, that's
focused
cool.
now.
No, I didn't know if I was like set something off. I'm actually a Buffalo Bills fan, so I'm not a Cowboys.
Boo.
Whatever. But right, we can kind of, there are some diehard sports fans out there, right? And so you can kind of, correlate that to ethnocentrism. Um, Another term is prejudice, and prejudice is just an intolerance of another cultural group. And then discrimination is withholding the rights and privileges from those of another cultural group. And so these are the things that we try to avoid when we're providing care for our clients. Again, we're in healthcare, right? We don't have a choice of, the people that come in to receive care from us. And we are in a field where we are going to be required to work with members that are of other cultures and religions, races, and each person deserves to be treated with the same respect. And so we try to look at, avoiding any of those particular things. Oops, I will share my screen again. All right, so cultural universality is basically that all persons share the same basic needs, right? Regardless of their age, of their sex, of their economic status, their lifestyle, religion, country of origin, or culture, right? We all have the same basic needs. And so, of course, this is where we think about Maslow's hierarchy, and I know everybody knows who Maslow is. Those lowest needs are universal. So rest, nutrition, hydration, elimination, right? Those are all the basic needs that people need. Um, Oops, there we go. So when we look at developing cultural competence, and we kind of touched on this a little bit already, right? We have to understand how, our own values, beliefs, our cultural heritage, how these can affect being culturally competent, because values are different, right? What I value is going to be different than what you may value. And our values change, right, as we get older as well. And so nothing, it's an ever evolving process. And so one of the things that, is discover the uniqueness of the client and how we can best serve them. Talked about stereotyping, we talked about cultural bias, but stereotyping is an inaccurate generalization used to describe all members of a specific group without exception. And so, it's not a good term to use. It's not a good term. It's not something that we should continue, because it is a false assumption in most cases. That everybody within a specific group or a specific culture is going to act specifically. And so one of the biggest things with stereotyping is that we are ignoring individual differences. And so even though a member falls into a, specific cultural group, doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to follow all of the same practices within that culture. And so one thing that we do need to do is take that into consideration. And that's why we should always avoid stereotyping. Just because someone is a member of a culture doesn't mean that they're going to follow all of those same practices. Talked about ethnocentrism, the attitude that one's group of doing things is better than that of groups. And we talked about prejudice and discrimination. So when we look at areas of cultural diversity, when we look at social organization, so social organization refers to the family unit, the person's affiliated religious or ethnic groups, as well as their political views. And families can be interpreted differently across cultures. Even though, people will call themselves siblings or cousins, even though they aren't blood related. These are something, just they've had similar experiences, they're close, they've had friendship. Um, that could be part of it. Space is another one that we have to look at. Space is the degree of comfort when speaking or interacting with people around. And so this is like your personal space, your personal bubble. Like, how close do you want somebody to you when they're speaking with you? Some cultures, they're more distant, right? They want more personal space, while others tend to get very up close and, personal when they're communicating. And that could definitely be a cultural thing. Your biologic variations, genetic tendencies, so, when we're doing that physical assessment, we're looking at the body build or the body structure. Is it small, medium, or large? Skin color, eye color, any nutritional variations, certain cultures and even certain people coming from certain countries, right? They may have, diseases that are more endemic to those areas that we need to assess for. Um, and so these are just some different things. And so when we are looking at working with, patients that come in from other countries, or even other cultures, asking about, what are some of the diseases or illnesses that are common in their family? Is there any kind of a genetic risk? So, we have to, assess that. Time. So tell me about time. So, when we look at time orientation also differs among cultures. And so they can describe their, time as past, present, or future oriented. So the present, if they live in the present, they're living in the moment, they just move, kind of like to the next tasks as appropriate. People that live in the past often look to their ancestors for wisdom and guidance. Can you think of a culture that is past oriented? Anybody know a culture that would be past oriented? So a lot of your Asian cultures, like your Chinese, your Japanese, right? They honor the traditions of the past, right? They historically look at things as they move forward. They look at their past. Um, and those that also live in the past, um, they generally don't see punctuality as a priority. And then those that are future oriented, they're very strong planners. They're usually very punctual. And for that group, their long-term health goals are important to them. Talk about communication, and I know last week we talked a lot about communication and communication. There's barriers that we can have with communication. One of the most important, right, would be that oh my gosh, what the word I'm looking for, the language differences. And so it's, could even include your verbal behaviors, right? And your nonverbal, whether they are, maintaining eye contact, use of touch, the use of silence could be different among different cultures. So when we look at providing care for patients that do not speak English or don't speak our language, what are some things that we need to take into consideration with that group?
Their
What
body
should be,
language,
I'm sorry,
their body language,
okay,
facial expressions,
body language, facial expressions. What else should we have available?
An interpreter.
An interpreter. Yep. Why do we not like to use family as an interpreter?
Because they can say what they want to say and give them whatever message they want to give.
Okay, that was very, I love the way you just said that. That was very to the point, right? They may not always give us the information that we need, or they may withhold information, right? Which can be a concern as well. And then, what else? I forgot what I was going to say, but that's all right. So yeah, so we're going to use interpreters, professional interpreters, and even things like taking into consideration to, in some cases, if we have the option, how do we choose an interpreter? Do we use a female interpreter, a male interpreter? Or even if we're dealing with like a teenager or a young adult, right? Maybe getting someone that's closer to that age, so that there's a little bit more understanding and more, they feel a little bit more open than speaking with an older person. And then when we look at environmental controls, and this is the, it's whether the person has an internal or external locus of control. So internal is the power within them, and then external is that fate. And then fate can play a large, or faith. Oh my gosh, I can't even say it. Fate can play a huge part in somebody's what their outcomes would be. And it's also kind of what defines their gives them their definition of health and illness. And so learning about cultural differences or cultural diversity, family structures may be different. And so we kind of like talked about that a little bit, right? No matter what culture we're talking about, then we know that the family is the basic unit of society. And so their child rearing practices may be different. How they view their family may be different. Who they consider family may be different. And we know that part of that is generalized, socializing the young to the culture of the group. And each culture is going to meet the needs of that child in specific ways. And we can look at just even the, in here in the United States, every, different family structures exist. It's not just coming from other cultures, but we have, extended families, we have traditional families, we have single parent families, extended families, right? We have a variety of different ones, and how each, person defines their family may be different. Um, food preferences. So food preferences, what, when, how clients eat may be different, by cultural group. Um, give me an example of some food preferences. Anybody know some food preferences among different cultures?
Isn't like Muslim, they don't eat pig, like
Yeah,
pork.
they don't eat pork. Uh-huh. Some of the Jewish population
It's kosher.
is the kosher foods, right? Um, so, we just have to, specific foods in certain cultures are going to have different meanings to them. And, they use different foods in some cases to either provide or to promote health, as well as to cure disease. So when we look at, what are their favorite foods? What are some foods that they need to avoid or that they won't eat? Um, with religious beliefs, so religious beliefs are personal. They're personal to the individual, and it's also a very important aspect of culture. And religion can have different meanings. Um, and so when we look at that, and we're going to talk about spirituality and religious differences in chapter 11. And, for some people, religion just may be a momentary thing. And then for other people, it can influence every aspect of their life. And so, in some cultures, religion or their religious beliefs, and have a strong congruence with the concept of wellness and illness. Education background. When we look at education background, um, educational background is in, we look at health literacy. What is health literacy?
The words that we use, like our medical
It could be the
terminology.
words that we use or understanding the words that we use, right? So if I hand somebody, when you go to stop sharing for a second. I don't know, when we go to the doctor's office, and my doctor's office does this is why I'm saying it. They have all those pamphlets on the wall. Do you guys, anybody else have those? Like in all different things. They'll have it on like diabetes, they'll have it on like high cholesterol. Trying to think of what else I've seen up there. Um, even sleep, anything. You guys know, anybody else know, you guys know what I'm talking about? Those little pamphlets that you can get at the doctor's office? No, my doctor the only one that does that. Um, but health literally, when we look at this, and this is a big part of how when we provide education to our clients or to our patients, if you have a newly diagnosed diabetic, or you have, a patient that you need to provide education about hypertension, or even, making diet changes, if they can't understand the information in a pamphlet or in the educational material that you're providing, then that's a concern, right? Health literacy is just understanding about what we're reading, but health specifically, we're looking at how well do they understand, health related topics. Um, in the United States, we have varying degrees. There are still people here in the United States that cannot read or write. All right. And so, of course, when we talk about patient education and stuff later, but how do we assess their needs, to make sure that they understand the information that we're giving them? And so when we're providing education, we need to take into consideration their educational background, as well as their literacy levels. So that is going to be an important, aspect when we look at that. And then we look at communication. And so again, we've talked about communication a lot over the last couple weeks. And communication is still always going to be a very important part of what we do. And, some of the areas of communication that may vary for people who are different culture or, part of different cultures, how we greet somebody. Some people are very, um, you know, um, talkative, I guess would be an appropriate word. Some people just, they want to have a nice conversation. They want to kind of get to know you, have some, light conversation before we start, our assessment or our interview. Others, they just want to get down to business. Like, what are we here for? Let's get it done. We don't need to have any small talk. Some people take longer to say goodbye. Others may just leave without saying anything. When we look at, appropriateness of the situation, some groups prefer to sit while they talk. Others, they don't want to stand and have a conversation. They prefer to sit. Confidentiality. Remember, all information that is given to us by our clients is considered confidential. And so have to take that into consideration too, even if it's among spouses. Emotions are universal, but cues to emotions vary. And so, if we have to be able to pick up on different cues from people, because if we don't pick up on certain cues, that could cause stress between the client and you. Some cultures are very open, very free with their emotions. Other cultures are very stoic and very reserved. They don't display affection, they don't show disapproval, they don't show frustration in public, right? Those things are done behind closed doors. And that's very similar to pain expression. Everybody feels pain the same way, but person's culture can influence the definition of pain as well as the response. And we know that when we do our pain assessments, that pain is what the patient tells us it is, right? It is a completely subjective experience. Whether or not you can see it on, their secondary or their nonverbal communication, no matter how, we look at them, it is always going to be subjective. And just like with, communication and showing emotions, pain's very similar. Some cultures are very open and will exhibit their pain very openly and loudly, while others are going to remain more stoic, and, be more passive, when it comes to experiencing pain. And so you can think of maybe some of the experiences that you've had with clients, whether it's been in clinical, or, even working as CNAs and care techs and other things, and, maybe see some of the differences. And then even silence, and I know we've talked about silence as well, but being comfortable with silence is important. And although it can have different meanings for people in different cultures, it could be, in some cultures, it could be a sign of disapproval. In some cultures, it could be a sign of approval. And I know, because especially for me, I'm horrible with silence. I feel like I have to have so something has to be going on with with the conversation, because it can be different, you know. So this is where those active listening skills really come into play, right? Silence is a good thing. And it's okay for us to have momentary pauses in silence. And we know that it also goes to the fact that, you know, if you're asking a question, especially with our older population, right, they may need a minute, right, to gather their thoughts before they answer. And so just having those, you know, having those moments of silence is a good thing, allowing them to get their thoughts together before they answer. Then we go into wellness and illness beliefs. So wellness and illness can have different meanings for people that are, you know, have different culture or from different cultures. And so we look at wellness and illness beliefs. This is things like you're preventing illnesses. So some will believe that illnesses can be prevented, so they may practice rituals, and then carry out rituals to, you know, as an attempt to prevent a disease from occurring. Other clients will look at prevention as an attempt to control the future. And so they may not be, you know, those may not follow through with their preventative care, like their immunizations or screenings. Um, and they may think that others may think that prevention is tempting fate. So they also won't follow through with those. With curing illness, some people will blame germs, some blame spirits, others blame an imbalance within the body. So some cultural groups will have like your folk medicine practices, like your rituals and procedures, or even, you know, things like curanderos and shaman and herbalists, that, you know, will provide to attempt to cure the disease. And then others believe in special foods or combinations, right? Like your hot and cold foods, um, your certain herbs, they think can prevent or cure illnesses, with complementary and alternative medicine. And so complementary and alternative medicine is assisting the body's own healing powers to restore body balance. And so a lot of providers here now too are looking at, you know, complementary medicine, to assist in even some of the medical practices, to help, you know, I don't know what the word is, just to help the body's healing powers. So it could be the use of herbs, it could be the use of vitamins and minerals and things like that. What are some other complementary measures other than like herbs and minerals that people can use for illness? Anybody?
Like yoga, Reiki.
Reiki, yogurt, um, massage therapy, acupuncture. Those are also some complementary medicines that people can use, to try to restore that balance. Um, Modesty is another thing too that we have to take into consideration. Um, you know, certain bodily functions, even reproductive functions, may be a cause of embarrassment, for some. And then we also have to look at hygiene practices. Hygiene practices, according to, you know, vary according to their beliefs, their living conditions, their resources, their personal characteristics. And so, you know, taking a shower every day may not be something that is common within that culture, right? They may have specific bathing rituals that they need to perform. Um, and if they don't, what if they don't have access? So think of a homeless population, right? They may not have access to take a shower, to take a bath, or to stay, to stay clean. And then mental illness. And mental illness, many of you I know are taking mental health this term as well. But there are some cultural groups that attach a stigma to mental illness, as well as psychiatrists. And don't believe in getting counseling or psychiatric help. And there's still a lot of people that believe in those things. Others believe that mental symptoms are manifested, or mental health symptoms are a healthy reaction to an emotional crisis. And then others believe that the mind and body are united, they're not separate entities. And a lot of them, may have traditional healers to work on healing both the body and the mind. So when we look at the diversity or the prominent groups here in the United States, it's projected by the year 2060 that nearly 57% of Americans may be members of an ethnic minority. So your Hispanics, 18%, your Asian, 6%, African American, 12%, your American Indian, Alaska Native, 1%, and then the white population, 61%. So this is what that was off of the 2017 census. So when we look at individual worth, everybody is worthy, everybody deserves equal care. And so it includes the uniqueness and the value of each human who comes for care, regardless of differences that may be observed or even differences that may be perceived. Each individual has the right to live according to his or her personal beliefs and values, as long as they don't interfere with the rights of others, right? And so that is one thing. Everybody has a right to be who they are and do what they want to do, as long as it's not interfering with the rights of others. So when we look at care planning for culturally diverse clients, it's gathering data regarding their ADLs, their personal health beliefs, as well as their health practices. And then using reference guides that present general information. So you can do research. And so there's I think it's called Think Cultural Health. It's a website that you can just access general information about some cultural groups. And so especially if you are working with a patient that is from a different cultural group that maybe you don't know about, or that you've not ever had experience with, and you can get some general information. And it's very general information. It's, some of the, wellness and illness beliefs. It may give you some nutritional preferences, maybe some communication techniques as well. But remember, this is very basic information. And so it's not always going to be applicable to every person from that culture. It's just a generalized information. The biggest thing, and I'm gonna stop sharing for a second here, and I'm gonna go back to we talked about, earlier, is really kind of understanding yourself, right? And so being culturally competent, we have to make sure that we are respectful of every client that comes in to see us. So big thing, and like someone said earlier, is knowing your culture, and knowing what your biases are, what you believe your stereotypes are. And when you look at your culture, what are your strengths, what are its strengths, what are its limitations? How does your culture affect your thinking and behavior? And so whether we openly admit it, our culture definitely affects how we think and how we behave. And understanding that will help us to deal with our clients on a different level. That going to and doing research on a culture is going to give you general information about the culture itself. And so you can see how members of one culture may be similar, but you can also see how they may be different. We also want to gain knowledge about their health beliefs and their practices. So we have to remember when working with clients that even though, it is one thing that, to understand that they are from a different culture, but we also have to respect that everyone is an individual. And how they practice their culture is going to, may not be the same as the large group. So what are some things that you as future nurses can do besides doing the self-analysis? What are some things you can do in practice to prevent or to avoid stereotyping our culturally diverse clients?
Maybe look at different religions and their beliefs.
Okay, so looking at different cultures, different religions, and kind of getting an idea of what their
Mhm.
beliefs are. Okay.
Checking your thought process at the door, like everything that I'm always go back to that. I always want to check what you believe at the door and leave it outside the door before you walk in to consider what they have going on and not just being judgmental about the situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to remember to, whether it's culture, whether it's religious, whatever it is, a person is a person. Doesn't matter what culture they are, doesn't matter what color they are, right? We are all humans and we all deserve respect. And we never know, we don't know. There's no way to know what their previous experience has been, right? With even members of the healthcare team. And think of, and I don't know if anybody here is from another country that has immigrated to the United States too, but, you know, coming and moving to the United States, I imagine is not something that's easy to do. All right. Just because our culture here is so different, right, from other countries. And we have freedoms here that others coming from other countries have not experienced before, right? And so it can be scary and overwhelming at times as well. They may be uncomfortable, right, as well. And so we have to
Actually, it's too much on freedom. Too much.
too much freedom here.
Too much.
Too much. It's but it is. And where are you from?
West Africa.
West Africa. Okay. And you're right. We have a lot of freedoms here that many people don't have in other countries. We were talking this has just been recent. So my granddaughter, she's 3.5, her stepdad is going to be stationed in England for 3 years. So she's going to go to England for 3 years. And so I don't know how, of course, started just thinking about maybe we'll go to England to see her while she's over there. But they have a law in England that if you offend somebody, whether it's through your actions or your words, they can arrest you for offending somebody. And I was like, wow, could you imagine that a law like that here in the United States? Like, I think everybody would probably be in jail. Um, but it's just interesting. I know that I did live in England for a little while when I was younger. And they have this place in England. I don't know if anybody's ever been to England, but it's in Hyde Park. It's called Speaker's Corner. So Speaker's Corner is somewhere that you can go and you can basically talk about any topic, any controversial topic, or any really topic you want to. But another interesting thing in England is you cannot speak poorly of the Queen or the royal family, or you will be arrested. So, I just know that because I lived there for a few years, so I know some of the laws and stuff. But it's very different here where we're very outspoken about our country's leadership, right? Whether we agree or disagree with them. So yes, so it is very different. But we just have to make sure that we are, avoiding the stereotyping, that we're not, applying information from one client, to all clients within a culture. We don't want to make assumptions. And we want to try, to respect whatever cultural, needs that the patient has. Um, and so, if they want to incorporate some of their foods, some of their, their herbs, their minerals, or even some of their other things into their plan of care, this is something that we need to respect. And again, as long as it isn't infringing on the rights of others, we can incorporate that into care. So like if they want to, if they're in the hospital and they want a shaman or another member of their religious um, or their culture group, not religious, then they can come in and they can, perform some of the rituals. Again, as long as it doesn't infringe or, it's dangerous or anything like that, that would be the only time that we would prevent them from doing that. All right, so any questions on chapter 10? No. All right. So chapter 11 is about spiritual needs, spiritual caring, and religious differences. So before we get started, we'll go ahead and take a break and be back at 4:10. All right. Oops. All right, so chapter 11 is about spirituality and spiritual needs, spiritual caring, and religious differences. So share my screen. So spirituality is an essential part of being human. It has to do with experience, beliefs, and values um, that give strength and hope. The spirit is the essence of the person, the innermost part of a person. Um, it is a life force that penetrates the entire being. It also includes the beliefs and value systems that give a person hope, as well as strength. And so spirituality and religion are related terms that have different meanings. Religion can be a spiritual experience that contains beliefs and values. It can include spirituality, um, but it has to do with giving form to that experience. And so you can be religious without being spiritual. You can be spiritual without being religious. So being spiritual doesn't always mean that one participates in a specific religion. And then many religions, it can be in a spiritual experience that contains very specific rituals and beliefs within that. And so again, people can be spiritual without being religious. It's just what they believe in. And so when we look at the spiritual dimension versus the emotional dimension, meeting a client's spiritual needs differs from providing emotional support. So the spiritual dimension of a person gives insight to the meaning of life, suffering, and death. It also refers to the relationship that a person has with a higher power. The emotional dimension includes how people respond and deal with feelings of joy, anger, sorrow, guilt, remorse, love. And how they respond to that. And so, it is different. Your spiritual dimension is different from your emotional dimension. So I think about, how, are you religious? Are you spiritual? How does that play a part in your life? What meaning does that provide to you? So when we look at providing spiritual care, it helps clients to develop an awareness of and maintain their inner strength, their self-awareness, life's meaning and purpose, their relationship to others, as well as their relationship to a higher power. So we look at spiritual care. So many of you have taken community already, and you learned about parish nurses, right? So parish nurses work within, a religious community with members of the congregation. They treat the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. So when we look at, patients that would require, spiritual care, anybody that's going into the hospital. So I don't know if anybody has ever been in a hospital and been admitted to a hospital for any length of time, right? But that is one thing that we do ask, right? Is what are their spiritual needs or what are their religious needs while they are in the hospital? Others, like clients that are in pain, that have a chronic or incurable disease, those that are dying. And then looking at, the families of someone who has just experienced the loss of a loved one, or those that are facing an undesirable outcome of illness, or even those that have emotionally lost control of themselves. So when you look at it, I'm going to stop sharing. How many of you how many of you practice and you don't have to share if you don't want to, but how many of you are part of a formal religion? Like you go to church on Sunday, you have specific rituals. Okay. How many of you are more spiritual and, kind of just, look at your spiritual needs? Okay. So how many of you feel, what's the word I'm like, comfortable enough to talk to your clients about their spiritual needs? Some, how many of you are comfortable if a client asks you to pray with them? Okay. So it's really can be uncomfortable for some, to work with patients and talk with patients about their spirituality and their religion, and just knowing again, it's kind of like the cultural care. It's kind of understanding your beliefs and your values where it comes to spirituality, and religion. And, how do you, um, what's the word? How are you, how comfortable are you with that? And so our spiritual, our personal spirituality, um, you know, it's our, who do we look to for support? It's how do we cope with stress? Or how do we cope with things that are, I'm sorry, I'll share my screen again. How do we cope with things that are beyond our control? It's almost like, who do you call on when things get hard and things get rough? And even like what brings your life meaning, what brings your joy, if you believe in the power of prayer. And so these are things that we kind of have to look at. So we need to be comfortable with dealing with spiritual matters. And then again, become aware of our own spirituality and the spirit that is the essence of you. So how do we meet the spiritual needs of our clients and families? Ask questions, right? Just like with culture, we don't ever want to assume just like because one person is part of a larger culture, right, that they participate in all aspects of that culture, right? We treat each person as an individual. And so we ask questions, right? We want to show interest. And that's where your communication techniques will come into play. We want to listen with an understanding attitude. And this is both not just what you say, but your body language, and, your responses. You want to respond naturally to spiritual concerns, just as naturally as you would if they had a physical concern. They told you that they were in pain. That you want to react or respond as naturally to the spiritual concerns. You want to help them face reality without abandoning hope. And that doesn't, remember your communication, that doesn't mean say, oh, it's going to be okay, right? We want them to, rely on their spirituality, their religion, as a source of hope for them. We also want to encourage their active involvement with self-care, right? Which can also help them to hold on to their hope, right? So no matter how bad it gets, no matter, how severe the situation is for them, any participation in self-care and active involvement, can help to, help them hold on to hope. We also want to allow families to participate in caregiving. So whether it's something simple as, just offering them fluids, holding their hand, wiping their forehead, helping them dress, whatever it is. And avoid those false assurances like that we learned about in, when we talked about active communication or therapeutic communication, right? It's not always going to be okay. So we don't want to give those false assurances. And we always want to be empathetic and supportive. And that is something that, we can really, always use practice with. So some of the interventions that we would use for spiritual care: ask open-ended questions. We know the difference between open-ended and closed-ended questions. The open-ended questions are going to elicit a lot more information as to what their specific needs are, making sure that we're listening actively, that we're making eye contact, that we're standing, we're beside the patient. We always want to be non-judgmental. Just like with culture, there's going to be religious differences as well. And it's remaining as non-judgmental, avoiding giving advice or lectures, right? Avoid trying to change a person's beliefs. We can't do that. Our goal is not to convert them into another religion or to even cause them to be religious. All right, so that's where, we're being non-judgmental. We want to make sure that we are looking at their nonverbal messages. We also want to understand the client's feelings, but avoid adopting those feelings for yourself, right? That's the difference between sympathy and empathy. When clients need help for care, for prayer, offer to pray with them. And for some, this may be an uncomfortable experience, but sometimes just sitting with them, maybe holding their hands, right? Pray with them. If they request help with specific readings, offer to read to them. So if they have a Bible verse or another religious book that, even if it's like a daily prayer or something like that, offer to read to them. When, yes, you can baptize a client if you are asked. And that may also be a, very comforting process for some. Help them participate in religious and spiritual rituals, and then protect any client's religious and spiritual articles. So you will, some people have shawls and again, I'm Catholic, so that's why I said Bible, but Bibles and rosary beads and other amulets. We just want to be very respectful of those, whatever their articles that are related to their spirituality or their religion, that we're respecting them and that we are protecting them from getting, lost, damaged. So Miss, does anybody want to share any of their spiritual beliefs or their practices? You don't have to, it's just a question. So I was born and raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school my whole life from preschool to I graduated from high school. So we went to church twice a week. We had, the other Catholic, I'm all of a sudden, I can't even think of what they're called. But I was baptized. I received my first Holy Communion. I did my confirmation when I went into high school. So there's different things that, are part of the Catholic community. And then as I got older, rather than participating in a more formalized religion, I'm much more spiritual now than I am I did raise my kids in the Catholic Church. And so they did some of the they had experience with church as younger, and they too have decided to be more spiritual than actually a formalized religion. So everybody is going to participate. Now, I still believe in a lot of the Catholic faith, and a lot, but I don't always believe with a lot of the practices within the Catholic religion, which is why I choose not to attend church. Doesn't mean that I don't believe in God and I don't have faith. So, and that's just an example. Some are very, of course, my grandmother is probably, turning over in her grave now that I've said that. But that is how I was raised. I'm a very strong Polish Catholic background. I have two great aunts that were nuns. I have a great uncle that was a bishop. So we were very, very active in the church for a very long period of time. And others choose, the opposite direction where they choose to not necessarily be part of that organized religion, but choose to be more spiritual. Who's heard of a pastoral care team? Who works in a hospital or has worked in a hospital? Okay. Have you guys have you guys heard of the pastoral care teams? Do you guys have pastoral care teams in your organizations? No.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right. So the pastoral care team is ministers, it's priests, it's rabbis. It also can be like your nuns, or other religious women. It could even be lay persons. So like I said, I know the Catholic religion pretty well. But we have deacons, and deacons are actually lay persons. They haven't taken the vows of a priest. But they are, they're deacons and they still practice within the church. And so that pastoral care team of, in a hospital, they could have, like a chaplain who is, what is the word I'm looking for? Not really a member of a specific religion, but kind of knows a little bit about every religion. And the pastoral care team are educated to meet the spiritual needs and religious needs within a healthcare setting. And so they can work with the nurses to make sure that we're providing the spiritual care of the clients that we need to. So, when we look at, and even sometimes the pastoral care team can be there for the nurses in times of distress. Think of like major traumas or even the death of a client, right, can be there to, help support the staff and the men, the doctors and nurses and other staff. But by talking and listening, that pastoral care team, can look at their fears, their hopes, their sources of strength, and then provide resources to them or be a resource to them. And provide that, much needed support while they are in the hospital or while they are going through, a rough period with their health, whether they're looking, whether they're, able to get better or is it a terminal diagnosis. And so it's just a matter of if you ask a client if they want a member of the pastoral care team to come and talk to them, then they will definitely come and meet with that client. Others may choose to have, a member of their religious organization or a religious leader come and meet them while they're in the hospital rather than, just the ones that are in the hospital, and that's okay as well. But regardless of the religious beliefs, or lack of them, I guess, um, all clients will have a spiritual self. And so they will have spiritual needs and personal spiritual practices that in order to meet those needs, whether, and it could be anything. And so gardening and meditation is there. But there's books, so inspirational books, there's music, there's even TV shows, um, breathing exercises, walking outside in nature, art, counting blessings, even talking with friends and relatives, crafts, hobbies, those can all help to meet a person's spiritual needs. And those spiritual practices help individuals to develop an awareness of self, as well as the meaning and the purpose of life. And so our religious self, it's our specific beliefs that we hold in regard to a higher power. Again, some of them, meet their needs by joining a or belonging to a specific religious denomination. And that a religious denomination is an organized group of people who share a philosophy that support their concept of God or their higher power, as well as their worship experiences. So these are more like, your Catholics, your Christians, your Baptists, your Latter-day Saints, your agnostics, your Pentecostal, your Jewish population. I mean, there's so many different religions, and I'm not going to sit here and name them all because I don't even know them all, but that is the more formal. Um, and agnostic holds the belief that the existence of God can neither be proved nor disproved, whereas atheists do not believe in that there is a supernatural, that the supernatural exists. Sorry, that they don't believe in God. Um, and so, regardless of, the spirituality, there's going to always be some differences. So rituals and practices of a religion can often be stabilizing forces for the client. So rituals are a series of actions that have religious meaning, which can, bring security. And it also can be like those concrete symbols, like I was saying earlier, like the amulets and the rosary beads, the Bible, but it could be pictures, icons, herbal packets is another one that that could be there, statues, even jewelry, anything that can affirm their connection to a higher power. And so the value of their rituals and their religious practices is determined by their faith. It's not the scientific proof of their faith, it's what they believe in. And so again, this is, asking the client, what rituals and exercises do they believe in and practice, that can potentially be incorporated into their care, to help avoid what we call spiritual distress. So spiritual distress can be observed in clients unable to practice religious rituals. And so if they're unable to attend church or receive communion or go to confession or whatever the specific practice is because of their hospitalization, their illness, whatever, that can lead to spiritual distress. It also we can see spiritual distress in clients who experience a conflict between religious and spiritual beliefs. And so, for the example here, it would be like a Catholic client who has been raped and is considering an abortion. So I'm Catholic, so we don't believe in abortion or birth control. And so that would be a spiritual distress for a Catholic woman who has been raped, has discovered that she is pregnant, and is now considering an abortion. So that could be something pretty significant in their lives. but we look at, like I said, some people are very religious and they want to practice or be able to practice their religious rituals or their practices, and if they are unable to, that can be very distressful for them. And that's why having either the pastoral care team or even a member of their faith, a spiritual leader or somebody within their church come out to visit them in the hospital, can be very comforting to them. And so I'm going to share a story. So, and just to kind of give like the importance. So when my mom was in hospice care, one of the big things that my mom had asked for, even though my mom had, she hadn't gone to church in a while, but still very spiritual and religious. But her physical limitations kind of like not allowed her to go to church. So when we put her in hospice care, she didn't really have a lot of requests of the hospice nurses. They did, they came in, they visited with her, and they did their normal routines. But the one thing that she did ask them was that they come out and they perform last rites. And so this is the only complaint that I ever had with hospice, because her hospice nurse was absolutely wonderful. And I had woken up, I had gotten the grocery list, and my daughter and I went to the grocery store, and it was Mother's Day. I'll never forget this. This is like until I guess dementia sits in, but so I went to the grocery store, and it was, like I said, it was Mother's Day. So my mom's favorite flower were yellow roses. Okay. I hadn't seen my mother yet that morning because we had gotten up pretty early. So got her a dozen yellow roses. And when I walked into my mother's room to give her roses, she was unresponsive. And I just kind of, how you just had that gut feeling that today was going to be the day. And then had this overwhelming feeling of guilt because the priest had not ever come out to do her last rites. So I called hospice, and they were like, well, we can't get anybody out there today. I said, you understand, this is like very important for my mom. Like, this needs to get done. And so I just was like, forget it. So I called the church, and I asked the priest, I said, please come out and give my mom last rites. Like, this is the one thing, like, of anything that she wanted, this was the only thing that she requested. And so I, by the grace of God, I was able to get the priest out there to do last rites. And she passed away less than an hour after after the priest had given her last rites. So I knew that was the last thing that she was waiting for, was for that priest to come. And so, I knew that it was very important to her. And so we have to sometimes set aside, and like I said, that was the only complaint that I ever had with hospice, is that they, the one thing that she wanted that they, had failed to follow through on, which fortunately was able to be, reconciled. But we have to understand that for some people, this is, very important to them. And whatever we can do, sometimes going a little bit of an extra mile, making the extra phone call, taking the 5 minutes, is very important to them. And so we have to, we have to look at their spirituality and their religion. It is part of their self. It's that holistic care that we need to, we need to provide to our patients. When we look at client and prayer, and I know for some people, prayer may not be something that you practice, that it can be potentially, almost distressing for some. And I can understand that. I've worked with nursing students that, I actually had a couple of nursing students that were atheists. And that's, that's their belief system. That is what they believe in. And they were like, well, I don't think that I could stop and pray with a client. And I said, well, this is where, it's one of those times where we have to put our personal feelings aside, right, and provide the best care for our clients. They're not asking you to believe, right? They're just asking you to sit with them. So prayer is a spiritual practice, that some, whether or not, they are members of an organized religion, right, that they do practice. And sometimes prayer can decrease anxiety almost as effectively as medications can. It can help them cope with their illness or their situation. And, if they want to pray alone, that's absolutely fine. If the client requests prayer, then we can assist or we can seek assistance. And, we can try to help them, with their prayer. And so, sorry, my dogs are gonna bark. Somebody ring my doorbell. Um, and so, you don't always have to, I will tell you, I don't know a lot of prayers. I know some of the common ones. But, sometimes you have your phone, you can look it up on your phone, or you can just follow with the patient. But religions in the United States, so in the United States, we have about 215 distinct church traditions. And so no way that you're going to know every belief of all of the different churches. So here's just kind of a little bit of breakdown. Christians are still the predominant religion. And so it's about 31% of the world population. Muslims are about 24%. Unaffiliated is about 16. Your Hindus are about 15.1% and Buddhists at 6.9. And so in the United States, specifically in the United States, the Roman Catholic Church is the largest denomination, followed by Baptists and then Methodists. And so we have, but this is worldwide. So avoiding false assumptions and stereotypes. And so it's just like I said earlier, not just like with culture, right? Not all members of the culture are going to participate in all of the cultural, rituals and values and customs that are part of that culture. And it's the same with your religions. So it is a false assumption to expect that all individuals of a specific religion or belief system will believe exactly the same just because they are members of that specific religion or group. And so individual differences will occur within every religious or belief group systems. That's something that we have to understand. So members can, people within a church may have modified the degree to which they observe their practices of their religion or their belief system, and for a variety of reasons. Like I use myself as an example. While I believe in a lot of the Catholic faith, right, there is some things that I just don't agree with, which has chosen me to not attend church in a formal manner, but does not hurt my spirituality. It's still right. I still believe in God and I still believe in a higher power. I just choose to express that in a different way or practice in a different way. And so we have to be careful and making sure that we're, not judging, our patients if their beliefs don't conform to the traditional ones of their religion. And so it's just everybody has different beliefs and different values and how they are going to portray those. And so just like with culture, the best way to find out about their spirituality or their religious beliefs, right, is going to be to ask them, and how we can, help them meet their needs spiritually. We also want to avoid assuming clients, I already said that. Sorry. Let's see. So yeah. So it's just a different, religion. Not everybody is religious, not everybody is spiritual, right? Everybody is going to practice a different way. And so, like I said, I'm very few, but I have met a couple atheists in my time, whether working with students or even working with clients, that really don't have any kind of spiritual dimension to them. And that's okay. I mean, that's their belief system. And so, just taking that into consideration. Trying to think of what else. Right. Does anybody have any questions on chapter 11? No, no questions. All right. So I've only got 10 and I can pick some more. So I've got some, I don't even remember which ones I did now. Let's go back. Let's do, because I can't remember which ones I did. So we are going to try to think of which ones I want to specifically look at. Let's do some questions about. No, I'm just trying to pick a good topic. Let's do delegation. All right. So we'll do some questions about delegation. So I have it in study mode. So I'm going to share my screen. So I have the chat up. So we'll read the question and then put your answer in the chat. All right. So number one, the home health nurse is interviewing an older patient with a history of rheumatoid arthritis who reports feeling pretty good, except for the pain and stiffness in my joints when I first get out of bed. Which member of the healthcare team would be notified to aid in the patient's pain? So we have the healthcare provider to review the dosage and frequency of pain medication. We have the physical therapist for evaluation of function and possible exercise. We have the social worker to locate community resources, or the home health aide to help a patient with a warm shower in the morning. Which one would we use? They feel good except for pain and stiffness when they first get out of bed. All right, so we have the physician, we have the physical therapist, and then someone said home health aides. I'm still waiting for a couple more people to answer. All right, so the majority is saying 2. So I'm going to click on 2 and let's see. The correct answer is the home health aide. So one of the most common features of rheumatoid arthritis is joint pain and stiffness when first rising, which usually resolves over the course of the day. So a non-pharmacological measure is to take a warm shower or apply warm packs if the pain is limited to 1 or 2 joints. If pain worsens, then the main nurse may elect to contact other members of the healthcare team. So, all right. So here, remember rheumatoid arthritis. Okay. So they feel good except for pain and stiffness when they first get out of bed. And so that was the key. So rheumatoid, they're going to be stiff, especially in the morning. So, yes, so that home health, nice warm shower, loosen up those joints. All right. In the care of patients with pain and discomfort, which task is most appropriate to delegate to a unlicensed assistive personnel? So pain and discomfort. We can assist the client or assist the patient with preparation of a sitz bath, monitor the patient for signs of discomfort while ambulating, coaching the patient to deep breathe during painful procedures, or evaluating relief after applying a cold compress. Cold compress, can't even say it. All right, so looking, the majority picked 1. So it is correct. And so the assisted personnel can assist with hygiene issues and knows the principles of safety and comfort for the sitz bath. So they can definitely, all right, good job. All right. A patient has severe pain and bladder distension related to urinary retention and possible obstruction. Insertion of an indwelling catheter is prescribed. An experienced UAP states that she is trained to do this procedure. Which task can be delegated to the AP? So, assessing the bladder distension and the pain associated with urinary retention, inserting the indwelling catheter after verifying her knowledge of sterile technique, evaluating the relief of pain and bladder distension after the catheter is inserted, or measuring the urine output after the catheter is inserted and obtaining a specimen. Good job. Awesome. So very good. All right. So number 4 was the most popular answer, and you are correct, right? So they may know how to do a Foley catheter, but they are not allowed to, right? It is a sterile procedure. So measuring an output, obtaining a specimen are within the scope of practice of the AP. Insertion of the indwelling catheter in this patient should be done by an experienced nurse because, right, it's obstruction and retention. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right. The nurse is caring for a patient with esophageal cancer. Which task could be delegated to assistive personnel? So we're caring for a patient with esophageal cancer. Can they assist with oral hygiene, observe response to feedings, evaluate risk for aspiration, or initiate weight measurements as needed? All right, so most popular answer is 1. Very good, that is correct. Oral hygiene is within the scope of duties of the AP, so the nurse would give the AP specific instructions related to the esophageal cancer. It is a responsibility of the nurse to observe the response to treatments and evaluate the risk of aspiration. Very good. All right. A patient had radiation therapy 3 months ago, and recently the healthcare provider prescribed epoetin. Which instruction would the home health nurse give to the home health aide regarding this, related to this new therapy? 1, encourage the patient to eat smaller amounts until nausea subsides. 2, allow the patient to rest between care activities until energy improves. 3, help the patient to stand up slowly until orthostatic hypotension resolves. Or 4, frequently cleanse the mouth with clear water until mucositis abates. So we have to know what epoetin is. Too many different answers. Okay. I stopped sharing for a screen for a sec. What is epoetin?
It's for anemia. It's a blood product.
So it's not a blood product, right? It
It's a
stimulates.
hormone that
it's
helps
in-
your body to create all of the blood cells.
Yep. So it is a synthetic form of erythropoietin. Erythropoietin is produced by the kidneys to help stimulate red blood cell production, right? So we want to
Okay.
increase the number of red blood cells. All
Mhm.
right. So if we're giving epoetin alpha, then they are probably anemic. So we will go with, where'd my chat go? So we'll go with number 2. All right. So the patient needs to rest between activities because of fatigue caused by anemia, which can be 3 to 4 months after therapy. So it's given to improve low hemoglobin and red cell factors. So there we go. Awesome. All right, next question. Patients, where did my chat go? All right. So patients receiving chemotherapy are at risk for thrombocytopenia related to the therapy or cancer disease process. Which actions for bleeding precautions can be delegated to assistive personnel? All right, so they're at risk for thrombocytopenia related to the therapy. What can we delegate? So it's a select all that apply. So we have provide mouthwash with alcohol for oral rinsing, use paper tape on fragile skin if tape is needed, use a soft toothbrush or oral sponge, gently insert rectal thermometer, handle gently to reduce bruising, and avoid overinflation of blood pressure cuffs. Select all that apply. I need a couple more people to answer. All right, so I'm going to go with, let's see, 3 and 5 were pretty much everybody. And then 2. And then somebody else said 6. All right, so we picked 2, 3, 5, 6. Good job. So no mouthwash with alcohol. And so it could dry out the mucous membranes. And if they have any mucositis already associated with the chemotherapy, then they're already going to have an issue. But yes, paper tape on fragile skin. If we have to use tape, we want to use a soft toothbrush or an oral sponge. Handle gently. Good job. And then avoid overinflation of the blood pressure cuff, right? Because overinflation of the blood pressure cuff can lead to bruising. All right, good job. For a patient who is experiencing side effects of radiation therapy, which task would be the most appropriate to delegate to assistive personnel? So, side effects of radiation, delegation, helping the client to cope with fatigue and lack of energy, encouraging participation in a walking program, reporting the amount and type of food consumed from the tray, and checking skin for redness and irritation after the treatment. All right, so what do we got? So we got some are saying 3, some are saying 4. So I'm going to go with 3. And yes, so we can look at the amount that they have eaten from the tray, report it to the nurse, right? So we, CNA or unlicensed assistive personnel, checking the skin for redness and irritation after the treatment would be a nursing responsibility. All right, does anybody need a quick 5 minutes? No? Okay. All right, so where's my chat again? There it is. All right, so next one. Which instruction would the nurse give to the assistant personnel about caring for a patient who is experiencing chemo brain? So the patient can understand you but cannot speak clearly.
Say something crazy on you.
Somebody needs to mute. Be cautious. The patient may be unpredictably aggressive. Calmly give explanations if the patient seems forgetful, or report immediately if the patient complains of a headache. All right, most common answer was 3, and that is correct. So we would instruct them to remain calm and give clear and simple directions, right? Because they can have some mental cloudiness with memory problems. It is generally temporary, but it can last for a while. All right. In the care of a patient with neutropenia, which tasks would the nurse delegate to assistive personnel? Taking vital signs every 4 hours, reporting a temperature more than 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, assessing for sore throat, cough, or burning with urination, gathering supplies to prepare the room for protective isolation, reporting superinfections such as candidiasis, or practicing good hand washing techniques. Which would we delegate to the UAP? We got 1, 2. All right, so we got 1, 2, 4, and 6, and you are correct. Measuring vital signs, reporting on specific parameters, practicing good hand washing, gathering equipment, those are all going to be within your scope. Good job, within their scope. All right, the nurse manager in a public health department is implementing a plan to reduce the incidence of infection with HIV in the community. Which nursing action would be delegated to UAPs working for the agency? So 1, supplying injection drug users with sterile injection equipment, such as needles and syringes. 2, interviewing patients about behaviors that indicate a need for annual HIV testing. 3, teaching high-risk community members about the use of condoms in preventing HIV infection. Or 4, assessing the community to determine which population groups to target for education. Ooh, it's a good one. So, which action could we delegate here? See what we got. We got mostly one and twos. Need a couple more people to answer. Let's see, it's a toss up between one and two. All right. All right, I'm gonna pick one, guys. Good job. So yes, we can so give them injection or give them, the sterile injection equipment, right? We're just giving it to them. We're not doing anything with it. Can't interview, we can't teach, and they can't assess. Okay, but they can hand out clean supplies. Good job. All right, so let's see, we've got still got 20 minutes. Let's see, let me see. Let's pick another one. Let's see. Let's do prioritization. We'll do 10. Well, yeah, we should be able to do 10. All right, let's see. All right, based on the principles of pain treatment, which consideration comes first? So treatment is based on patient goals. A multidisciplinary approach is needed. Patient's perception of pain must be accepted, and drug side effects must be prevented and managed. So based on the principles of pain treatment, which consideration comes first? All right, we got 3. Very good, right? The patient must be believed. His or her pain experience must be acknowledged as valid. I'm sorry. All right. According to the Centers for Disease Control, I don't know why these are all about pain right now, but according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines for opioid use for patients with chronic pain, which actions are part of the nurse's responsibility related to the current opioid crisis? So this is a select all that apply. So one, recognize that negative attitudes towards substance abusers is a barrier to patient compliance. Access electronic prescription drug monitoring program whenever patients receive an opioid prescription. Learn to recognize the signs and symptoms of opioid overdose and the proper use of naloxone. Use a tone of voice and facial expression that convey acceptance and understanding of patients who are addicted. And then report healthcare providers who fail to safely prescribe opioids according to the guidelines. This is a big one. So we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2. So we got 2 and 3. We've also got, so then we got 4, 5 as well as another one. So we want to go with, we'll go with 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, what did we get? So the correct answers are 1, 3, and 4. So the widespread use of opioids and the increase in mortality and morbidity make it essential for nurses to recognize any personal negative bias and work towards conveying acceptance and understanding. This increases the likelihood of patient engagement and success in treatment programs. Obviously, we want to learn and recognize the signs and symptoms of opioid overdose and the proper use of naloxone. And then, oops, use a, well, I don't know where, there it is. Okay. And then of course it says to, where is it? Where'd it go? Okay, and then use a tone of voice or tone of voice and facial expression that convey acceptance and understanding of patients that are addicted, right? No matter who walks in the door, right? We need to make sure that we are providing good care. All right, on the first day after surgery, a patient who was on a patient-controlled analgesic pump report the pain control is inadequate. Which action should the nurse take first? So are we going to deliver the bolus per the standing order, contact the healthcare provider, try a non-pharmacological comfort measure, or assess the pain for location, quality, intensity? So they're saying that the pain control is inadequate. What should we do first? All right, so we'll go with 4. Very good, right? We want to know, we want to assess the pain, right? Is there any changes? And then good job. All right. What is the best way to schedule medications for a patient with constant pain? As needed, at the patient's request, before painful procedures, IV bolus after pain assessment, or around the clock. All right, so most common answer is 4. Very good. If the pain is constant, the best schedule is around the clock to provide steady analgesia and pain control. Good job. All right, which patient is at greatest risk for respiratory depression when receiving opioids for analgesia? So an older patient with chronic pain related to joint immobility, patient with a heroin addiction and back pain, young female patient with advanced multiple myeloma, or an opioid naive adolescent with an arm fracture and cystic fibrosis. Yeah, this is like a big question. All right, so we got 1, 4, 1, 2. So greatest risk for respiratory depression when receiving analgesics. Trying to figure out which one's got the most. All right, looks like 1. Let's see. Nope. It is the opioid naive adolescent with an arm fracture and cystic fibrosis. All right, number 6. A patient with diabetic neuropathy reports a burning electrical type pain in the lower extremities that is worse at night and not responding to NSAIDs. Which medication would the nurse advocate for first? Gabapentin, corticosteroids, hydromorphone, or lorazepam. So a burning electrical type pain in the lower extremities that is worse at night, not responding to NSAIDs. Oh, can't even say it. Everybody, that was a quick one. Everybody went for the gabapentin. I'd have gone for the gabapentin too, right? Because it is an anti-epileptic drug, but we also use it for diabetic neuropathies. Good job. All right, when an analgesic is titrated to manage pain, what is the priority goal? I'm sorry. So when an analgesic is titrated to manage pain, what is the priority goal? So titrate to the smallest dose that provides relief with the fewest side effects. Titrate up until the patient is pain-free or an acceptable level is reached. Titrate down to prevent toxicity, overdose, and adverse effects. And titrate to a dosage that is adequate to meet the patient's subjective needs. This is an interesting one. So we're titrating to manage pain. What is the priority goal? So we got 1 and 3, 4. All right, couple more people need to answer. All right, most people are going with 1, so we will go with 1. Good job. The goal is to control pain while minimizing side effects, right? Good job. All right. According to recent guidelines from the American Pain Society, I did not pick pain as a subject. I just want you to know I just picked prioritization. So according to the recent guidelines from the American Pain Society in collaboration with the American Society of Anesthesiologists, whatever, which pain management strategies are important for post-surgical patients? So these are post-op patients. So Tylenol or NSAIDs for management of post-op pain in adults and children without contraindications. Surgical site specific regional. I don't even know if we can answer this question. But we're going to try. Surgical site specific peripheral regional anesthetic techniques in adults and children for procedures. Epidural analgesia for major thoracic and abdominal procedures if the patient has a risk for cardiac complications or prolonged ileus. Multimodal therapy that could include opioids and non-opioids, regional anesthetic techniques and non-pharmacological therapies, IV administration of opioids rather than oral for post-op analgesia, and then pain specialized to manage post-op pain for all surgical patients. Anybody want to hazard a guess? So the only one I can definitely rule out is going to be number 6, right? Because we don't need pain management for all of our post-op patients. So 1, 4, and 5 is what I see so far. Come on, guys. What do we got? Just hazard a guess. 3 and 5, 1, 2, 3, and 5. 2, 3, and 5. So we know 3 and 5, those are definitely going to be part of our popular answer. We got 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 4, and 5. We get another one was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so we're gonna go with 1, 2, 3, and 5. And what did we miss? So it was 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm just curious. Let's read this. It says for post-op patients, we're going to do the acetaminophen or NSAIDs if there are no contraindications. We can do the regional anesthetic techniques. Okay, that makes sense. We can do the epidural for major thoracic and abdominal procedures if they are a risk for cardiac complications. Okay. And then, of course, the multimodal therapy. We know that that is always going to be something that we are going to implement. Oh, not bad, you guys. We did pretty good, I think. I think we did pretty good. We just missed the number 4. Okay. All right. When a patient stoically abides with his parents' encouragement to tough out the pain rather than risk an addiction to opioids, the nurse recognizes the sociocultural dimension of pain is the current priority for the patient. Which question will the nurse ask? I like this question. All right, so where is the pain located? Does it radiate? How would you describe the pain and how is it affecting you? What do you believe about pain medication and drug addiction? How is the pain affecting your activity level and your ability to function? So everybody looking like 2. 2 is the most popular answer. All right, and let's see, we'll go with 2. So the correct answer is, what do you believe about pain medication and drug addiction? All right, so beliefs, attitudes, familial influences are part of the sociocultural dimension of pain. So what do we believe about it and its drug addiction, right? So we have to look at, remember, the parents are, trying to tell them to tough out the pain rather than risk an addiction. All right, and last question. Which patient is most likely to receive opioids for extended periods of time? So we have a patient with fibromyalgia, a patient with phantom limb pain in the leg, a patient with progressive pancreatic cancer, and then a patient with trigeminal neuralgia. So which one is going to most likely receive opioids for an extended period of time? All right, most people picked 1. Dun, 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 dun. So it is the person with the progressive pancreatic cancer, right? So cancer pain usually worsens with disease progression. Fibromyalgia, we're more likely going to treat with non-opioids. So let me stop sharing my screen. All right. So you guys did good. Those were, except for that one question. I don't know where that question came from. But do these help? So is this something that we can continue to do? Like I said, I just picked prioritization and delegation. I don't know why they all went for pain management, but so but if these help, we can continue to do them. So there's other topics here. I was trying to see, I did it in study mode. So there's even some next gen questions that we can look at. So on prioritization and delegation, there's also assignment and priority. So there's other topics that I can pick here. So we can kind of just go through some different topics. If you want to go through some different topics, we can do that. So, all right, it is 5:26. It's 5:25. So we didn't take that last break. So you guys are free to go. Remember the review tomorrow and Sunday. Y'all have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.